Hello, 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 everyone. This is Reverend Karen speaking to you from the back 40 of northwestern Nevada at the Woogie Ranch. And today's episode in Fearlessly Feral Living is about embracing the uncomfortability of change. Yes, indeedy. We're going to talk about reshaping our experience of change today. And instead of telling ourselves, well, I don't do change well, we can instead tell ourselves change is about opportunity. But first, let me do the introduction. So, welcome to Fearlessly Feral Living. I'm broadcasting to you from the Woogie Ranch out here in the back 40 of northwestern Nevada, where I'm a half an hour away from the nearest gas station and the nearest grocery store. The mission here at Fearlessly Feral Living is to teach practical application of science of mind principles so that we have a strong and unshakable inner foundation that facilitates successful long-term living. And today's topic comes from the Centers for Spiritual Living Global Themes. The topic for the entire month of February is divine discontent. I'm sorry, divine discomfort. Well, that was a Freudian slip of the tongue, wasn't it? Divine discomfort is the topic for the entire month of February. Divine discomfort indeed. What's so divine about change and discomfort? Well, I'll tell you. What's divine about it is that when we are uncomfortable, we are at choice. We can choose to either fight the change, thus limiting ourselves. Fighting change means limitation. Or we can lean into the change and embrace it and discover new and wonderful ways of being as a result of it. Now, I have a confession to make. I thought I had this change thing down. I really did. I thought I got this. After all, I am a transition specialist. I figured I had been so many changes in my life that surely I must be an expert by now. And I took that to heart, and I became an interim minister where my job is to successfully usher communities from the big, huge change of losing their minister and the resulting chaos that comes from that into something new that works for them. I figured I got this. I know how to do change, and I know how to do change successfully. And without fail, each and every community I work with fights the change on some level. Many times this shows up as impatience. They want to dive in right now and get some work done and get this thing done and get things moving. And I always patiently tell them, not yet. There's a process to be done first. There's grief work to be done. There's forgiveness work to be done. There's new things to learn. There's visioning work to be done. And sometimes there's simply a need to rest. So imagine my surprise when I joined a group called Deconstructing New Thought, and I got impatient because all we were doing was meeting on Zoom and talking about our ideas for the directions the group should be going. We weren't doing anything. And one day I went so far as to post in our Facebook group a list of what I thought we should be doing. I was impatient. And in a blink of an eye, I went from divine discomfort to let's move on and get out of this stage. And I had to laugh at myself. I thought, oh my God, really? Come on, Karen, it's time to practice what you preach. And so I began to lean into this thing and explore what was up for me. And through a series of opportunities, I found myself reading the book that was recommended for this month's topic by the Global Themes Committee. This book is called Trust, Mastering the Four Essential Trusts by Iyanla Vanzant. Oh, and just as an aside, I've decided to do a book study on this book. It is an incredibly awesome book. It'll begin on Monday, March the 4th. So if you're interested, it'll be on Zoom and it's free. I'll give you more information about that later on in the podcast toward the end. But if you're interested, make a note of it and send me an email and let me know, and I'll send you all the pertinent informations. Anyway, I'm reading this book and my world is getting rocked. This is one of those books You know how every once in a while you encounter a book and it rocks your world? This book is rocking my world. Because in reading just the introduction, I realized I might have some tiny little trust issues. Now, that's like being a tiny little bit pregnant, in case you're wondering. There's no such thing as tiny little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you aren't. You either are or you ain't. There's no middle ground with these things. So yeah, I've got some tiny little trust issues. In spite of all the work I've done, the work never stops, guys. It just never stops. There's always something new and wonderful on the horizon, and that's what divine discomfort is all about. So anyway, yeah, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable, but I'm leaning into it because I know the opportunities for advancement lay on the other side. I know this. I feel this. I believe this. I know that doing this work is important. I know to just settle back in and rest and read this book and do the work it recommends. Because I know that in so doing, it will allow me to be more effective, not only in my personal life, but in doing my work in the world. I also know this truth that Ernest Holmes so eloquently voices. He says, nature will not let us stay in any one place for too long. She will let us stay just long enough to gather the experience necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is a wise provision, for should we stay here too long, we would become too set, too rigid, too inflexible. Nature demands the change in order that we may advance. When the change comes, we should welcome it with a smile on the lips and a song in the heart. So, yeah, in the midst of the uncomfortability of change at these deep kinds of levels, and in the midst of perhaps some sadness and some anger, we can also welcome these changes with a smile on our lips and a song in our heart. Because again, I know without a doubt that these kinds of changes bring with it the opportunity for advancement. Actually, I'm going to revise that. Every change that happens is opportunity for advancement. Might not be real pleasant while we're in it, but it's always an opportunity for advancement. And I take great comfort in statements like the one Ernest Holmes made, because it reassures me that I'm not alone and that what I'm going through is a right place, right time sort of thing. It's perfect right timing and perfect right action. There is divinity here. So finding the divinity in the discomfort is about welcoming change with a smile on our lips and a song in our heart. And I can hear it now. I know some of you are saying, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Look who's talking. Don't believe me? Well, here's another yummy quote for you. Okay. This one comes from Emmett Fox in his book called Around the Year with Emmett Fox. And it comes from the reading for April 12th. He said, change is the law of the universe. Without change, the world would not merely remain in a static state. It would soon become stale and stagnant. Without change, there would be no progress, for change is the essence of betterment. It is obvious that to do anything in a new and better way, there must be change. I love that sentence. I'm envisioning in my mind a stream or a river. And you know where the river ceases to flow in certain areas? That area gets stagnant. It starts to stink a little. It's not very pleasant in that area. But if we go in the section of the river where it's constantly changing, where the water is constantly moving, oh, it sounds beautiful. And the rushing water feels heavenly. Have you ever gone and sat by a stream that is flowing? It's just a wonderful feeling. Here's the deal, folks. There are not only two certain things in life, as they like to say. People like to say there's only two certainties in life, death and taxes. No, no, no. There's three. Yes, there's death. Yes, there's taxes, but there is also change. And change is a certainty in our life. So it behooves us to embrace change and move through the divine discomfort and find that divinity in there or create that divinity in there, better yet, and do change successfully. So, how can we do that? How do we successfully do this thing called change? We're cruising through life and all of a sudden we're thrown with a whammy. Something happens. Or we're cruising through life and all of a sudden we have this inner realization that the way that we have been doing things is no longer working for us. It could be an inner change or an outer change. How do we lean into that divine discomfort and glean the nuggets of growth and wisdom with gratitude and joy? And you know what I'm going to say here. If you've listened to my podcast before, wait for it. You know what I'm going to say here. Spiritual practices, guys. Spiritual practices. It's what this teaching called Science of Mind is all about, folks. It's about living in spiritual principle and practicing and living in also spiritual practices every single day, consistently and persistently. Change is uncomfortable with me, which means that life can sometimes be uncomfortable. But in Science of Mind, the discomfort of change highlights the importance of embracing conscious awareness, positive but not wishful thinking that is based in principle and aligning your beliefs with the creative power of the universe. By embracing change with openness and releasing resistance, we can experience personal growth and create a more fulfilling life. So, yeah, change is uncomfortable. But if we do the spiritual practices of conscious awareness and positive thinking through treatment, and we base ourselves and we live in the principle of personal inner freedom, we got this, guys. We got this. So, I'm talking about the principle of freedom coupled with introspection and treatment or affirmative prayer. And and I'm going to throw in forgiveness because usually we always need forgiveness. So, with me in this trust thing that I'm going through right now, forgiveness of self is essential. Essential. But let's go to the principle first, freedom. Such a deep principle freedom is. And I'm not speaking here of the freedom to do what we wish when we wish, because there's people in this world who do not have that freedom. People like me, I live in a certain amount of privilege. I have a lot of freedom in my life to do what I want when I want, simply by virtue of my color and honestly, my gender. There are people who do not have the same kind of freedom I do. That's not the freedom I'm speaking of here. I'm speaking of freedom from paralyzing thinking, freedom from anxiety, freedom from arguing for our own limitations, from trying to control everything around us in order to protect ourselves from the craziness of the world. And I don't know about you, but when I think about this stuff, when I think about freedom, my mind turns to faith and trust as well. Turns out this Van Zandt book is timely for me because when I am experiencing the uncomfortability that comes with this kind of change, I need every ounce of faith and trust I can grab hold of or create or feel or something. Faith tends to be a dirty word in New Thought circles, and trust, well, I don't know anybody who speaks of trust the same way they speak of, well, let's say gratitude. Nobody likes the concept of having trust. It's not something I've heard that people want to cultivate in their lives. And I've heard folks say, I don't like the word faith. So they substitute words like allowing for faith. They substitute words like allowing for control. And I have a little story to tell you here. So recently on this little journey, because I didn't have faith and I didn't have trust and I wasn't allowing. I was attempting to control out of my fear. I was experiencing a tremendous amount of anxiety. And the doc was poking at me because my blood pressure was up there in levels that made everybody in the doctor's office shake their heads and go, well, this is not good. This, they're like seriously concerned for me. I have to laugh at them. I'm like, I went, there's other stuff going on here, but I have taken steps to lower the blood pressure, guys. I'm not ignoring them, but I have to laugh at their reactions to things like that. Anyway, no faith, no trust, anxiety, fear, and high blood pressure. That's what I was getting. I didn't like that at all. So I'm moving through life and I'm processing this and I'm thinking about things like trust. And one day I realized that I wasn't allowing, I wasn't releasing. I was trying to control everything. Now, releasing is not something we commonly talk about in New Thought circles. You hear about it in Christianity a lot. Let go and let God. Give it all to God. Well, I don't believe in that because God isn't separate from me. God is within me. So when I release, what do I release to? When I trust, what do I have trust in? When I have faith, what do I have faith in? Turns out there's just a nice little minor change in the language there. It's not a trust in, it's the trust of God. It's not faith in God, it's the faith of God. And when I release to, yes, there is something greater than me out there. I call it an energy force that is God in essence, in pure essence, because God is a part of me and God is a part of you, but it's also that energy force. And so I release it to that as well. And I change my thinking. And so my motto every day, every morning I get up and I set an intention for the day. And it's not intention about outer stuff, it's an intention about inner things. And my intention has been to release. Release. Let go. And you know what? The first day I did that, I took my blood pressure that afternoon. Guess what? First time in weeks. It's normal. This stuff is powerful, guys. It is powerful, powerful, powerful. So I have faith of God and trust of God, and I release. I just release. I don't need to even know where I'm releasing it to. I just know that I'm releasing. There are certain things I'm here to do in life and certain things I am not here to do. Some wonderful things have happened as a result of having that little release mantra going on for me every day. But I want to move on our topic here. So they say God is everywhere, present all the time, and all good all the time. So maybe we can start there. Maybe we can start with God is all good all the time and everywhere present. Because if God is all good all the time and everywhere present, then this uncomfortability that I'm experiencing, that's also all good all the time. That's how this thing works. Our job when we are going through these changes is to have the faith that we can have and to allow and to release. And at the same time, know that because God is everywhere present and all good all the time, that we are okay and that we can and will take care of ourselves. And at the same time, know that we are also cared for. Control no longer works. Setting boundaries works. But that old way of thinking that is fear-based, that wants us to try and control everything in our lives, that doesn't work anymore. And so when I start thinking about things like trust and faith and allowing and releasing, then I get down to the nitty-gritty where, okay, Karen, you've been in a lot of fear here because you've been trying to control a lot of stuff and it's none of your business. You need to stop that or you're going to kill yourself physically. And so I breathe. and release and allow. And once I do that, once I breathe and release and allow, then I can go from there and investigate with a clearer head what I'm really feeling from that process, that spiritual principle of freedom that engenders in me thoughts of all sorts of things like faith and fear and allowing and releasing and controlling, all that stuff. From all that freedom stuff, I can then move into the spiritual practice of introspection that is so valuable. What does that look like in this case? Well, introspection is all about knowing what we are thinking and feeling, because that's our difference than feelings. It's all about knowing what we are thinking and feeling at any given time. Sometimes we might need a journal to figure that out. Sometimes, if you've been doing this practice for a really long time, like I have, all it takes is, oh, what am I feeling right now? And boom, I got it. Sometimes I might have to process a bit in order to figure out what's going on with me. So we ask ourselves, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling about this situation? And we do so without judgment. We honor our feelings without empathy. We don't judge them. We also don't have to act on them either. Our feelings are not the boss of us. We might ask ourselves, what are the patterns of my feelings? What is the pattern of my thinking? Am I thinking primarily optimistically or am I thinking primarily pessimistically? Makes a huge difference in the quality of our lives. So we look at the patterns of our thinking. When you do the practice of personal self-awareness long enough, it becomes the default setting. And pretty soon you don't have to actively and consciously remind yourself to do this. Pretty soon it's just like a part of you. It becomes part of your life. You're aware pretty much 24/7. I recommend doing some sort of introspective practice daily, every day from here until forever. It's that important. Introspection is the beginning of all possibilities for us in our lives. Find or create a process of introspection that works for you and do it. And recognize as time moves on that sometimes your process for doing introspection may need to change. Mine changes all the time. Sometimes I can simply think it and know it. Sometimes I have to journal. I woke up in the middle of the night the other night and I decided it was time to do some morning pages because my mind was really, that. And I sat down and I got my journal out and I did the morning pages, Julia Cameron's morning pages, where you write 3 pages of stream of consciousness writing. So I was writing this in the middle of the night in semi-darkness. It doesn't need to be legible. You just need to get it out of you and onto the paper. And I did that. And I felt so much better. And I went back to sleep afterwards and slept like a baby. So it doesn't matter. I don't always use the practice of the morning pages. I use other things too. The point is to do it. Do that personal introspection, that self-awareness practice. Create a practice for yourself or find one that works for you and change when necessary. Now, after the introspection, all of a sudden we're knowing what we're thinking and we're feeling, and we might need some help in the area of changing what we're thinking or feeling. And here is where treatment comes in, also known as affirmative prayer. Reviewing 5 steps to affirmative prayer. God is, I am, it's done, thanks, bye. God is. We recognize that God is all there is. I am. We recognize that I am a part of that God, and it is a part of me. From that state of oneness, I speak my word. That's the it's done part. I speak my word in first person present tense, feeling and knowing that what I am speaking is manifesting in me right here and right now. And then I express my gratitude. That's the thanks. And I release and anchor with a wonderful term, Even if you've hung out in centers for spiritual living for any length of time, you've heard this term. And so it is. And we do that. And the other little piece about this process of leaning into the design discomfort and getting out the other end with advancement in our lives, with a better life, is forgiveness. Sometimes in this process of change, we're going to need to forgive. We might need to forgive ourselves, or we might need to forgive someone else. But again, this is a spiritual practice. And the thing about forgiveness is that it gives us relief. It's not about them, it's about us. It gives us relief so that we can go out and do our work in the world. So forgiveness is far too deep a thing for me to cover in the context of this particular podcast. I have other podcasts on forgiveness. Now, remember the awareness that I had about trust issues and that book study that I mentioned? So Iyanla Van Zandt is the author of the book. It's called Trust, Mastering the 4 Essential Elements of Trust. It's available wherever you buy books. In person at a bookstore, at your local Center for Spiritual Living bookstore. I'll bet you they have some. Or on Amazon. It's available in print or digital format. If you want to join me for the book study, again, it will be on Zoom beginning Monday, March 4th, on Monday afternoons from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time for 5 weeks. Again, beginning Monday, March 4th. I'm going to give you my contact information in a little bit, but basically you can go to my website at fearlesslyferal.org, and there'll be a way to contact me on the website. Meanwhile, know that this leaning into change and coming out the other end more successful than ever, living more fearlessly feral than ever, is what this teaching called Science of Mind is all about. This teaching is a liberation theology, guys, and that this is one of the ways that we get liberated. We have a connection with a God that lives as us and helps us navigate those stormy waters and gives us the power to steer ourselves through. We have personal self-awareness that allows us to know ourselves and know what it is we wish to create in our lives as a result of all this divine upheaval and deconstruction. And the treatments affirm our direction and send us right into that beautiful and powerful creative process so that we can begin to create something new and wonderful in our lives. And so it is. So I do thank you for your listening and your support. And your support is tax deductible because I'm a member of Centers for Spiritual Living, and Fearlessly Feral Living is a focused ministry. So any donations you choose to give are tax deductible and very much appreciated. So you can support this podcast and all the other work that I do by going to the PayPal page, paypal.me/Karen Lindsley, Nevada. And again, these will be in the show notes. You can also find that web link at fearlesslyferal.org. And you can support the podcast at Buzzsprout. So I thank you once again for listening. And I am knowing fearlessly feral living for me and for you.